Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining tonight's calendar conversation. I'm Dr. Shadae Harris, and I serve as the Chief Engagement Officer for Richmond Public Schools. We are thrilled to have everyone here with us this evening as we share information about the 2021-2022 calendar proposal that really focuses on equity and providing more instruction to students who need it. But even more important, we're here because we want to hear from you. So to hear your feedback and your questions on the proposed calendar. So just a couple of reminders as we get started. Everyone who has joined will be muted for the presentation portion. And then after the presentation is over, and this is just a quick recap from Superintendent Kamras, we're going to move straight to question and answer. Because again, we want to spend the bulk of this time hearing from you, answering your questions. We ask that you use the raise hand feature to let us know you have a question. And then from there, you'll be called on to unmute and ask your question. You can also put your questions in the chat. And Mr. Stanley, Matthew Stanley, our Director of Advocacy and Outreach, he'll be reading those and keeping us all in order. So again, thank you so much for joining us. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Kamras to get us started.
Thank you so much, Dr. Harris. It's wonderful to have all of you here tonight. Before I kick things off, we are graced with our school board chair, Mrs. Cheryl Burke. Mrs. Burke, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you so much, Superintendent Kamras, and good evening, everyone. 7th District and other visitors as well. We thank you so much for being here for our first kickoff event per Richmond Public Schools regarding where do we go from here in regards to the student teaching learning process. So thank you all so very much. I do value your feedback and so appreciate your being on this evening. I hope some students are on as well. But thank you so much, and thank you, Mr. Kamras, for the opportunity to greet everyone.
My pleasure. Thank you, Mrs. Burke, and everybody for being here tonight. So as Dr. Harris said, I first just want to do a high-level overview, and I'm going to share my screen in just a second. But before I do that, I want to kind of roll back a few months, actually back to the year 2020, which already feels like a long time ago. As we were heading into the winter, the school board voted to instruct the administration to come up with a year-round calendar. This is something that the school board had been discussing for quite some time, and we hadn't gotten to it just yet, but ultimately, the board wanted to see a year-round calendar. And so in the fall, they voted to instruct the administration to go ahead and begin thinking about and preparing a year-round calendar. So over the winter, that's the work that we have been engaged in per the board's request. And after speaking with all of my advisory councils and lots of other folks, came up with an initial draft, got a lot of good feedback on that, and made some significant revisions. And that brought us to the latest draft, which we shared a few weeks ago. And now we're in the process of hearing from the community, hearing from our teachers about this latest draft. And ultimately, we want to hear from as many people as we possibly can so that I can then bring back to the board a summary of what we've been hearing and ultimately make a decision. That is, the board makes the decision about how to proceed for next year. So the goal will be to make that decision at our next school board meeting on March 15th, so 1 week from tonight. And it's why these meetings are so important, and we are so appreciative of everyone for joining on a Monday evening. All right, before I dive in any further, I do want to just also address the why question. Why did the board instruct the administration to put together a year-round calendar? And why am I, as the head of the administration, advocating for this calendar? And really, when it boils down after all the kind of discussions and whatnot, it really boils down to a question of equity, of trying to give the young people in our school system who need additional instructional time more time. And that was something that the board was interested in before COVID. And it's something that seems to be of even more interest after COVID as we come out of this pandemic and we reflect on the many challenges that our young people are facing and know that we're going to have to do more to support them. So that's really what this is all about, is creating an optional opportunity for kids who need the most to get the most. And at the end of the day, that's really what equity is all about. All right, I'm going to share my screen to walk everyone through the calendar. Here it is. All right, so I'm just going to kind of go slowly through it because what I have found is there are actually a lot of misconceptions about the calendar, and I want to make sure we're all talking about the same thing. So first, let me just orient you a little bit. This is July up here of 2021. So this is the current year, July. And a few more things. Let me just say a word about the colors. The yellow are regular school days. The red are days off. And then what we're going to talk a lot about are the blue days. Those are the extra days of instruction. And then for any teachers out there, the green days are professional development days, and the purple days are teacher work days, time for you to work on whatever you feel necessary to be prepared. And then last, the gray days, there's one here and one here, are parent conference days. So let's start with the blue days. That's really the biggest part of this calendar, the biggest shift that is. You'll see a chunk of blue days here in July and August. Then you'll see another chunk in November, and then another chunk in March. Those are the extra days of instruction that I was mentioning before. Those blue days would be optional, but we would encourage young people who need a little bit more support and opportunities for advancement and acceleration to participate in those blue days. We'd be focused on about 5,000 students. And again, it's optional. And if some of the students didn't want to participate, we keep going until we filled up all 5,000 spots. So it would likely end up being a mix of abilities. And those young people would come starting on July 19th, and we go all the way to August 6th. This chunk of days we call Jumpstart, because it's really just a jumpstart to the school year. And the focus would really be at the elementary and middle school level on reading, to make sure that kids were up to speed on reading skills. They would get support from RPS teachers in small groups, no more than 8 students in a group, by our very own certified RPS teachers. You'll see that then in November, there's another group of blue days. That's what we call Fall Boost. That would be another opportunity for these young people to get additional support in small groups. And then there's another opportunity in March called Spring Boost to get that small group support for advancement. All of these blue days, it's about 7 weeks, would be optional, not just for the kids, but also for teachers. So if teachers wanted to work those extra days, they could choose to do so. And we would pay, our normal rate for extra duty is $22 an hour, but in recognition of how important this is and how much of a commitment it would be for teachers, we're proposing to pay $40 an hour, so almost double. And if you worked all of those blue days, it would come out to more than $10,000 over the course of the year. Again, that would be optional. The teachers could choose to work those days or not work those days. The kids could choose to come those days or not come those days. But again, highly encouraged for those who need the most support. If you were not participating in those days, either as a student or a teacher, those days would be off. And for young people who would not be participating, one of the things that we're working on is working with places like Peter Paul and the YMCA and Boys and Girls Club and Parks and Rec to provide free or very low cost camps and other opportunities for kids. So during these weeks, even if you weren't in the boost in March or November or the Jumpstart in July and August, you would still have great opportunities to be engaged and to continue to be involved in fun and enriching activities. And for teachers, if any chose not to work these days, that would just be off, just like any off days, in essence, vacation days. What's interesting and great about this calendar is for students and teachers who don't participate in the extra days, the number of school days is exactly the same as a normal school year, and the number of work days is exactly the same as a normal school year. You'll notice right here, August 17th in red, that would be the official first day of school for everyone, whether you did the jump start or not. And you'll see June 24th, also in red, would be the official last day of school for everyone. Again, whether you did the boosts or not. And what that does is shorten the summer by a little bit. And we know that there's a lot of research that kids fall behind over the course of the summer. It's called the summer slide or summer learning loss. And so by shortening the summer a little bit, we help address that. Plus, by having these boosts in the year and at the start of the year, we can help kids advance and accelerate, which is really, really important. So that's the general idea. I do want to note, even if you worked these extra days or you're a child and you went these extra days, you still have a good sized summer. And if you didn't work those days, you have about 8 weeks of summer. So I want to be clear, the summer doesn't go away, and kids and teachers aren't working 365 days a year. That's not what this is all about. So that's the summary. I understand and acknowledge there are lots of different opinions about the calendar, and I understand that change is always hard and disconcerting, and I'm not gonna try to convince anyone otherwise. I recognize that and I appreciate that. I also know that some folks are just looking for quote unquote normalcy after the pandemic, and I appreciate that too as a superintendent, but also as a parent. I do feel strongly, though, given the board's direction to explore a year-round calendar and what we're learning from the pandemic, that there are significant impacts on student learning, that this is a moment where we have to step up on behalf of our kids and offer them more. And so this is sort of our best effort at putting that together while maintaining a lot of options for kids and families and teachers. And we're excited to continue to hear from folks what you feel is working, what's not working, and anything else we can do to continue to improve the proposal. So with that, I'll stop and let's open it up to questions. And Matthew, I'll kind of defer to you on how to do that.
Yes, good evening, everybody. We do have several questions that have popped into the chat. And in the meantime, if anybody wants to be unmuted so that you can ask a question and talk with us, you're welcome to use the raise hand feature and we will allow you to unmute. So please go ahead and do that. But Jason, would you like to read the questions in the chat or would you like me to read them out loud?
Why don't you do it? Because it's I may get a little bit lost in everything I got going on here. I do want to know, though, I believe board member White, board member Young, and board member Rizzi have joined. And so I did want to recognize them. If there are any other board members that I am not aware of that are on the chat, I want to say welcome to you as well. All right, with that, Matthew,
yes,
take us away.
Yes, so the first question tonight is from Cassandra, and her question is, can a family choose to participate in fall and spring boost, but not jumpstart?
Great question. We would encourage strongly participation in all of the sessions, but we would be open to that as well. We know that there might be particular family reasons why you wouldn't be able to participate in one or the other, we probably would want families to let us know at the beginning of the year so we can plan accordingly.
Jason, sorry, you froze for 1 second. So,
All right.
okay, so next question then. In England, where they do year-round school, they do 9 weeks on and 3 weeks off. Why are our days not scheduled that way?
So we looked at a schedule sort of like that. The challenge with that, though, is you really wind up with no summer of note at all. And then you also wind up with long breaks throughout the year, which make childcare very challenging. So this is really a compromise approach to try to get a good amount of the kind of the benefits of the year round while not going so far as to take away a summer altogether.
Okay, next question is from Betsy. My question, the board asked for multiple options. Why only one calendar?
Well, we started with one option. We got feedback on that, and this is the next option. So there certainly have been 2 iterations. The charge was to come up with a year-round calendar. So that's why we're focused on year-round. And we continue to take feedback and we'll continue to iterate. I hope we move forward with this. If we don't, that will be fine, and we'll figure out another path forward. And if we do move forward with this, I think over the next couple of years, we can continue to iterate it based on feedback and hear, what's working, what's not working, and continue to adjust.
The next question is from Caitlin. Will you be addressing the in-person opportunity for high-need kids in April of 2021?
I'll say a brief word about that, though that's not the subject of tonight's discussion. So I want to make sure we keep space open for the conversation about next year's calendar. But for the April in-person option, we're focused on about 300 of our highest need students, exceptional education students and English learner students. Those families are being contacted now by our exceptional education team and our language team. So families don't need to do anything. If you are hoping that your child is identified, you can reach out to us and we can let you know if they are part of that group. You can always just email me directly and I can connect you with Renisha Parks, who's our head of exceptional education. She's fantastic. And Tyra Harrison, who's over our language team. And they can let you know the details of which students are identified and why those young people are identified. My email, as always, is jkamras@rvaschools.net.
Next, we have from Mary Gresham. Hi, Mary. Will elective or CTE teachers have the opportunity to teach the extra days and earn $10,000, especially teachers who teach skill classes?
Thanks for the question, Mary. I think what I would say is probably some would, but perhaps not all. And I really want to make sure that I'm being clear about that. The focus, for example, for elementary and middle would be literacy. So we'd really be focused on reading teachers, elementary teachers, and so on. But we would also want to have in the afternoons a variety of enrichment opportunities for young people. And so I think having elective teachers participate in that would be very, very helpful. At the high school level, we'll likely focus mostly on core classes needed for graduation. Mary, as you know better than most, a CTE credential is required for a standard diploma. And so that might be something that is needed. And so we would want teachers in that area to participate as well.
Superintendent Kamras, Horace is asking about support staff and wondering if they'll get a bonus, the 12-month employee clerical custodians.
Thank you. We at this time have not included a bonus for 12-month employees, as their contract currently is over 12 months. And so, while there would be more days with kids in a building, the length of contract really isn't changing. So that is not something that we had anticipated at this time.
Betsy's asking if the board votes on Monday, where is student input? I feel high school students have many opinions about this, and it feels more punitive to them than helpful.
Well, I have spoken to a number of high school students about this. I spoke to my high school student advisory council actually last week, I believe. And it was really interesting to hear their perspective. A number of them actually indicated that they thought this would be less stressful having those breaks in the middle of the year, and that if they needed help, they could get that help without everything moving forward, so they could come to the boost sessions, get additional support without their normal classes keep moving. It's like a pause and they can get the help. They also thought that opportunities to work during those weeks would be great. They noted the summer would be shorter, so there's less time for them to work during the summer and make extra money, but then they would have those weeks during the year to do so. And so I thought it was going to be a more mixed set of feedback, but I was surprised that they were largely supportive of this direction. That doesn't mean that all kids are. I wouldn't try to suggest that. But I have found in my conversations a lot of support from high school students.
This is from the Smiths. Why aren't the breaks spaced out? Hold on one second. Here we go. Why aren't the breaks spaced out more evenly? It seems that the short stint in December and March between breaks is not enough time to get into the school rhythm. Breaks should be spread out more, like October, then December, then one break in the spring of March and April.
So we tried to do it such that there were about 3 months of instruction between each of the breaks. So you'll see we have, starting here halfway of August, September, October, and then half of November. So that's 3 months of instruction. And then we have one of the boost sessions. Then we have December, January, and February, 3 more months. And then we have one of the boost sessions. And then we have March, April, May, June. So about 3.5 months at the end of the year. So it was to put, about 3 months of instruction in between each of the boost sessions. Now, look, there are an infinite number of ways to do this. You can, there are models where there are 3 breaks, and you could have one in October, January and April. You could have, longer breaks. Lots of different ways that you can vary this. We wanted to try to have some level of consistency, again, the 3 months in between each of the boosts, and also not create too much time in the middle of the year where there would be some students or some families who would have to come up with childcare, because we know that's a concern.
Great. Elizabeth is wondering about the boost and jumpstart, and wondering if we'll still have traditional summer school to recover class and verified credits.
So for this summer, the jumpstart really would take the place of summer school. That being said, for high school students who need credit recovery, we would continue to do our normal credit recovery programs to make sure that they're getting what they need.
Great. Carolyn, thank you for your question. She's asking if teachers decide to opt in for the extra weeks, do they have to do all of them, or can they choose which weeks to teach?
Yeah, I get this question a lot. I think what we would do is we would probably say, look, how many people want to work all 3? And then if there weren't enough to do all 3, and there might not be, then we would say, okay, who wants to do 2? Who wants to do 1? And we'd sort of fill it in until everything was filled up as we needed. So My gut is there probably would be opportunities for teachers to do 2 of the sessions or 1 of the sessions, whatever works best for them. Obviously, I want to be clear, if you don't work all the sessions, it's not 10,000 because the pay is based on the number of days you would work extra.
Amanda's also asking about the breaks not being at why the breaks are at the 9-week mark, but only 2-week breaks. So I think you may have just answered that, Superintendent Kamras. Elizabeth Wade, high school is officially going to 4x4 next year. So will fall testing be scheduled before or after winter break?
Will fall testing, I'm not sure if Elizabeth is asking about SOL testing, but that's something that we would have to talk to the state about. I will say that we would streamline and align all of our testing to match the calendar, so we didn't have weird situations where testing would happen over, right before a break and right after a break. We'd make sure that things align and make sense. But Elizabeth, if you shoot me an email with the details of your question, I'll look into it for you.
Yes, and we'll also share your feedback. I know you put some comments in here, Elizabeth, and make sure we share it with our team, especially our academic team. Kathy, thank you for your question. Wants to know about our families of our ELL students who opt for this calendar. Will they be in primary schools only, or middle and high school be included?
Middle and high also, so all grades, and those would be young people that we want to make sure are getting the extra support. So yes, that would be a constituency that we would strongly encourage to participate. I also just want to know, going back to Elizabeth's question, you'll notice in the calendar January 21st is a purple day. That means it's a teacher work day, meaning it's just time for teachers to plan or grade or do whatever they have to do. That's the 90th day of school. So that would be when the semester is switching. And so that would be an opportunity for teachers to prepare for that switch at the high school level. Great.
Michelle would like to know if it's our intention to use reading intervention assistants to facilitate the Jumpstart lessons.
We would want reading teachers, reading interventionists, elementary teachers, everybody related to literacy would be very, very important for the Jumpstart and for both boost sessions.
And Caroline, are you asking about start and end time of day of school for the additional weeks? I wasn't clear from your question. I think Matthew has unmuted you if you want to ask. While he's doing that, Superintendent Kamras, Mary would like to know, what will graduation dates look like if school ends June 24th?
Good question. I don't have the dates set in my mind for when they would be. They'd probably be a little bit later than they normally are. So getting into June as opposed to sort of late May. But again, that would be sort of adjusting the kind of normal rhythm of the school year, as we would with a number of things with this calendar.
And what would be the start time for school, start and end time for the school? Would this affect that?
No, we're not talking about a longer day. So that is actually something that we had considered, but that really did not garner support from teachers, families, or kids across the board. The feeling being, at a certain point, there's just not much more you can kind of achieve in terms of a school day, and kids start waning and teachers start waning, and then there's after school activities. So that is something that we didn't really pursue very, very strongly based on that feedback.
And Keisha would like to know, do we have access to the document to see what qualifies students to be a part of the 5,000 that this calendar was made for?
So there's no hard and fast rule that we've put out yet. In one of the documents we shared with the school board, it's on board docs. We articulated sort of based on PALS and MAP and so on. And for folks watching, these are, various assessments, approximately how many students per grade we think would qualify, and how that adds up to a little bit more than 5,000. But ultimately, the academic office would put out, concrete guidelines around, what PALS benchmark score and what MAP score and so on would we, really be focused on. At the same time, though, we also want to make sure that we're taking into account teacher recommendations and family enthusiasm, and also, identify the enrichment options for the young people. So I think it's not exactly going to be completely formulaic, but if the board approves this, we will certainly, put out more details around what some of those scores would be.
Right, Elizabeth is giving some feedback again about moving the larger breaks to end of quarters. So we thank you for that feedback. Next we have Damon Jiggets, who would like to share. He wrote a statement and a question on behalf of our staff and board at Peter Paul. We are in full support of this calendar and our approach to advancing our students. Our teens have been asking about sports and other extracurricular activities. How are they impacted by this calendar, given the fact that regional school districts have varying calendars?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, and thank you, Mr. Jietz, for weighing in. In some ways, this calendar may actually give RPS students an advantage in that during these sessions, it could also be an opportunity for athletes to engage in additional practices, more training, without being encumbered by the normal school day. So I actually think that could be a real advantage. Also, by kind of coming back a little bit earlier, it also means that kids will be kind of getting ready earlier for the fall sports and then ultimately for spring sports. So I see it as a real advantage. I would also say for families thinking about, one of the other questions I got was related to, applying to colleges and how does this impact that? Again, I think it actually gives RPS kids an advantage because, if I've got a couple of weeks off in November, then I could work on my college applications and get help from my counselors and so on and so forth. That is a real benefit. Whereas a lot of kids, are trying to cram everything in on top of schoolwork. And so this could be a real opportunity.
So Jason, following that, we have a couple comments. One just about a group of carry teachers that enjoy the year-round calendar concept. Another similarly, or on the opposite side, group of about 20 high school students who feel very differently and have lost jobs on weekends, and that summer's when they can earn more money. Kind of just talking about it's very much up to individual groups as far as how people feel about the calendar. A couple other comments. One was about one workday is not enough teacher workday time for a 4x4 schedule. I don't know if you wanted to address that.
I'm glad to add in more work days. It just kind of stretches the calendar out even more. So we were trying to kind of balance the number of work days with trying to keep the calendar as compressed as it could be. But look, if the board moves forward with this, it doesn't mean that we can't make little tweaks like that along the way, and I'm certainly open to that.
Okay, and then the next question is, what will the CTE courses summer selection process consist of?
That I don't know, but if we can get the questioner, get their information, we can get that detail and get it back to them.
Yeah, that was Allison Davis. If you'll email us, outreach@rvaschools.net, we can follow up with you. Next question was from, looks like Yolanda. How can teachers get their classrooms ready in only 2 days in August when classrooms have been closed for so long and will require more than 2 days to be cleaned and organized? Instead of spending 4 days in PD in August, teachers could use those days for planning and preparing.
Again, I'm open to making tweaks on that. This was actually fewer PD days than we've had in the past. Normally we've had more in August. So actually kind of shrunk that down without shrinking down the number of teacher work days. And so I'm certainly open to adding in another work day if necessary for folks to get ready. I think on the plus side, in terms of getting ready, everything will be nice and clean and fresh. So that is sort of one benefit coming back this next school year.
Okay, next question is from Selena. With this year-round calendar, will virtual learning still be an option? And if so, will parents at any time have the option to change to in-person learning? And will in-person teachers have to teach both? Great
question. So our goal is to offer in-person to every family that wants in-person. And so we'll be prepared to offer in-person to 100% of our families. At the same time, we know some families probably will not want in-person. And so we will also have a virtual pathway for families who want that. We probably are going to need families to make a
session. Jonathan and Cheryl are both able to turn their cameras on. Mariah and I
Miss Rizzi,
can't turn them on.
if
and
you can
Matt
mute.
is telling us there are technical difficulties, and I've tried to.
Okay, sorry about that. So we would maintain a virtual option. We'll probably need families to probably decide for each semester. It would be hard to kind of pop back and forth between virtual and in person because we'd have to set up the classes, and we don't want there to be lots of changes of the classes. So that's my initial thinking at this point. You know, in the summer you would pick, I'm going to be in person for the fall, or I'm going to be virtual for the fall, and then we would go from there.
So the next question is also from Elizabeth. Is changing school daily start times on the table? My high school students are really benefiting from the later start time.
Yes, I would like us to have more developmentally appropriate start times. So, you know, before the pandemic, our start times were actually exactly the opposite of what brain science says they should be. So we had our high schoolers going the earliest and our elementary kids going the latest. It should be the exact opposite of that. So yes, I would like us to have our little ones start the earliest, then our middle schoolers, and then our high schoolers.
Great. Lafanya was asking, will a July start date be in person for all students?
This calendar has an official start date for all students of August 17th. August 17th. The July days would be the optional days for additional support, and those would be in-person days, as would the August days.
And Allison is asking about CTE Tech students. What time would they arrive and depart, and how many days would the students attend?
I would, again, need to check specifics on start times for CTE, so we can capture Allison's information. We can follow up on that.
Yes, and just want to let everyone know again, we do have several board members on the call, Board Member Rizzi and White. Our team is working, we're having some technical difficulties to make sure their cameras can work. So we apologize for any technical difficulties, and we'll try to get those up as soon as possible. But thank you again to all of the board members who have joined us this evening. Board Member Burke, Young, Rizzi, and White. Thank you again. Betsy Milburn, I think she was just correcting Virginia VHSL. Caitlin is asking, will credit recovery programs for high school students be offered in person or virtually during the summer?
I think come the latter part of July, probably in person as part of the boost, before that, it would be virtual. We wouldn't have any in-person opportunities until that latter part of July.
Great. And then Horace, how does the 4-day schedule work for 12-month employees?
The 4-day schedule. Not sure I follow that.
Horace, could you give us, if you're still on, if you wouldn't mind just giving us a little more context on that question, we would be happy to answer it. Summer schedule.
Oh, maybe Horace is asking about summer Fridays. Folks work longer hours Monday through Thursday, and then Fridays are off.
All right, that brings us to our last question, Superintendent Kamras.
All right. Well,
go ahead.
no, I just want to say thank you so much for everybody who joined us tonight. It looks like we have over 80 participants. That's fabulous. I know the East End always shows up in strength, as Mrs. Burke always shares. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me directly at jkamras@rpsschools.net. I really want to make sure you have all of your answers as you think about this and as you talk to board members about your thoughts about it. I do think it's an exciting opportunity, and so I do want to be transparent about my advocacy for it. But look, ultimately, this is a decision for the school board, and one way or the other, I'm excited for next year, no matter what our calendar is. Just excited to have kids back in person. Really looking forward to that. Mrs. Burke, any final thoughts you would like to add before we wrap up?
Yes, thank you so very much. And thank you to everyone. At one time, we had over 91 persons,
Oh,
Mr.
okay.
Kamras. Yes. And I'm so delighted that persons called in, and parents, faculty and staff, students, do not let this be the end of the conversation. Please continue. There's another session tomorrow night, the next night, the next night. Please continue to let this conversation go on before we make a decision on Monday during our school board meeting. But your feedback, your input is very much appreciated. So thank you all so very much. And keep the flow of conversation going, because be mindful. We are responsible for making sure we keep the main thing, and that is the teaching and learning process of every child every day. And I thank each of you so much for being together with us with this process. I see our East End and Eastview residents are devoted to our students, and people are thanking us. We do it better when we do it together. So however it unfolds, we thank you for your input. Thank you, Superintendent Kamras.
Thank
Dr.
you,
Harris,
Chair Burke.
Dr. Harris, thank you so much. Mr. Stanley, thank you so much. And to my colleagues, Mrs. White, Mr. Young, thank you for being.
Oh, I think you're muted, Mrs. Burke.
They must have muted me. But thank you all so much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Dr. Harris, any final notes?
Again, we just want to thank everyone. We will continue to provide opportunities to hear your feedback. We have to do this work together, and that starts with you. So Matthew, where can people email if they want to continue or have more questions?
Yes, outreach at rvaschools.net. We will drop it in the chat, and please feel free to send your messages there, and we will make sure they get answered.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We have another town hall tomorrow, and check our website for multiple opportunities to engage in conversation with us. So thank you and have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you all so much. Good night.